Welcome to Framework, the podcast that makes the NIST cybersecurity framework practical, engaging, and accessible. Whether you're a cybersecurity professional, business leader, or simply curious about how organizations defend against cyber threats, this series is for you. This podcast is inspired by a comprehensive guide to the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, a best-selling resource written by cybersecurity expert Dr. Jason Edwards and trusted by professionals worldwide. In each episode, we'll leverage a few insights from Jason's extensive book to dive deep into CSF 2.0, unpacking every function, category, and subcategory with real-world applications you can immediately use. If you're enjoying this episode and want to learn more, head over to cyberauthor.me to grab your copy of the book and access additional resources to enhance your cybersecurity journey. You can also visit baremetalcyber.com, where over 2 million people last year explored expert insights, articles, and practical tools across a wide range of cybersecurity topics. ID.RA-06, Prioritizing Risk Response Strategies. The ID.RA-06 ensures that organizations evaluate and rank cybersecurity risks based on their severity, likelihood, and business impact, allowing for an informed and structured approach to risk mitigation. This subcategory belongs to the Identify function within the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework, version 2.0, emphasizing that organizations must not only assess cybersecurity risks, but also determine how to respond to them effectively by prioritizing mitigation efforts based on risk exposure and business impact. Without structured risk response prioritization, organizations risk misallocating security resources, delaying responses to critical cyber threats, and failing to mitigate the most pressing risks before they escalate into security incidents. By prioritizing risk response strategies, organizations ensure that cybersecurity teams focus on mitigating high-impact threats first, while maintaining flexibility to address evolving risks based on real-time intelligence and threat modeling. A structured approach to risk prioritization enables organizations to align mitigation efforts with business objectives, improve response times for critical threats, and optimize cybersecurity investments. Organizations that adopt risk-based decision-making models, integrate cybersecurity risk response frameworks, and enforce structured prioritization methodologies improve their ability to reduce exposure to high-severity cyber threats, minimize business disruption, and strengthen enterprise-wide cybersecurity resilience. Multiple stakeholders play a role in prioritizing risk response strategies. Cybersecurity leadership and risk management teams are responsible for evaluating identified risks, determining their potential impact on business operations, and prioritizing mitigation efforts accordingly. Business executives and compliance officers ensure that risk response strategies align with business continuity goals, regulatory requirements, and enterprise risk tolerance levels. Incident response and security operations teams leverage risk prioritization frameworks to allocate resources effectively, ensuring that critical security threats are addressed with the highest urgency. Risk response prioritization is implemented through structured risk ranking methodologies, real-time risk analysis platforms, and adaptive security decision-making frameworks. This includes deploying AI-driven risk scoring tools to assess and rank cybersecurity threats, integrating risk prioritization into enterprise cybersecurity governance, and continuously reassessing security risks based on evolving attack patterns. Organizations that fail to prioritize risk response strategies effectively risk spending valuable resources on low-impact security threats while leaving high-risk vulnerabilities unaddressed, leading to increased exposure to cyber attacks and regulatory penalties. Several key terms define risk response prioritization and its role in cybersecurity governance. Risk-based decision-making ensures that organizations determine risk response actions based on data-driven security risk analysis, allowing for strategic resource allocation. Threat impact and likelihood ranking ensures that organizations classify risks based on both their probability and their potential damage to business operations. Critical asset protection ensures that organizations prioritize cybersecurity measures for mission-critical systems, data, and infrastructure, reducing the likelihood of high-impact security incidents. Risk tolerance and acceptable risk levels ensure that organizations define which cybersecurity risks require immediate remediation and which can be monitored or transferred through cybersecurity insurance. Adaptive risk response models ensure that organizations adjust their risk prioritization strategies dynamically based on emerging cyber threats and intelligence-driven risk forecasting. Challenges in prioritizing risk response strategies often lead to inefficient security operations, delayed risk mitigation, and failure to align cybersecurity strategies with business objectives. One common issue is lack of risk prioritization consistency, where organizations use different methodologies across departments, leading to fragmented risk mitigation efforts and uncoordinated security responses. Another issue is overlooking emerging risks due to outdated prioritization models, where organizations fail to reassess and reprioritize cybersecurity risks based on real-time threat intelligence, leaving them vulnerable to new attack vectors. Some organizations mistakenly believe that all risks must be mitigated equally, without recognizing that risk response strategies should focus first on the highest impact threats while maintaining flexibility for lower priority risks. When organizations implement structured risk response prioritization frameworks, they enhance cybersecurity decision-making, improve resource allocation for risk mitigation, and ensure that security investments align with business-critical threats. A structured risk ranking framework ensures that cybersecurity teams assess threats accurately, business leadership aligns security budgets with risk severity, and security teams implement dynamic response strategies tailored to evolving cyber risks. Organizations that adopt AI-driven risk scoring models, enforce structured security decision-making frameworks, and integrate continuous risk reassessment into cybersecurity governance develop a comprehensive cybersecurity risk prioritization strategy that strengthens resilience against evolving cybersecurity threats. Organizations that fail to prioritize risk response strategies effectively face significant security, operational, and compliance challenges. Without structured risk prioritization, businesses risk allocating resources inefficiently, leaving critical threats unaddressed, and reacting to cybersecurity incidents in an ad hoc manner rather than proactively mitigating them. A common issue is treating all risks with the same urgency, where organizations fail to distinguish between high-priority and low-priority threats, leading to wasted time and effort on low-impact risks, while severe vulnerabilities remain unresolved. Another major challenge is delayed response times due to weak risk-ranking frameworks, where organizations lack formalized methodologies for classifying threats, making it difficult to determine which risks require immediate action and which can be monitored over time. By implementing structured risk prioritization strategies, organizations ensure that security teams can rapidly address high-risk threats while maintaining flexibility to assess and manage lower-priority risks based on evolving threat intelligence. A well-defined risk prioritization framework improves security decision-making, ensures that mitigation efforts align with business objectives, and enhances an organization's ability to prevent cyber incidents before they escalate. Organizations that deploy automated risk scoring tools, enforce structured risk prioritization policies, and integrate adaptive risk response models into cybersecurity governance improve their ability to detect, prevent, and mitigate cyber threats efficiently. At the partial tier, organizations lack structured processes for prioritizing cybersecurity risks, leading to disorganized risk management, inconsistent response efforts, and an inability to allocate security resources effectively. Risk mitigation is handled reactively, with organizations addressing cybersecurity threats based on convenience or available resources rather than strategic priority. A small business at this level may apply security patches to systems on an ad hoc basis, without assessing which vulnerabilities pose the greatest risk, leaving critical infrastructure exposed, while less important updates are addressed first. At the risk-informed tier, organizations begin to develop structured risk prioritization processes, ensuring that security teams rank threats based on impact severity and business risk tolerance. However, risk response prioritization efforts may still be limited, with inconsistent application of security risk assessments across different business units, A mid-sized retail company at this level may prioritize risk mitigation for its online payment system, but fail to assess risks in internal databases, leaving them vulnerable to insider threats and unauthorized access. At the repeatable tier, organizations implement a fully structured risk prioritization framework, ensuring that cybersecurity risks are continuously ranked, reviewed, and reassessed based on evolving security intelligence. Risk prioritization governance is formalized, with leadership actively involved in reviewing risk ranking models and ensuring that cybersecurity investments align with the most critical threats. A financial institution at this stage may use predictive analytics to assess the likelihood and impact of cyber fraud, insider threats, and ransomware attacks, ensuring that security teams focus on the highest risk vulnerabilities first. At the adaptive tier, organizations employ AI-driven risk prioritization, real-time threat intelligence integration, and dynamic risk response models to continuously adjust cybersecurity risk rankings based on changing cyber attack trends. Risk prioritization is fully integrated into enterprise cybersecurity governance, ensuring that security teams can dynamically reallocate resources, automate mitigation workflows, and enhance risk-based decision-making process. A multinational technology corporation at this level may use AI-powered attack simulations to forecast emerging cyber threats, dynamically adjust security configurations, and proactively allocate resources to mitigate the most pressing cybersecurity risks. Prioritizing risk response strategies aligns with multiple controls in the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Special Publication 800-53, ensuring that organizations implement structured cybersecurity risk ranking frameworks and proactive cybersecurity risk mitigation models. One key control is RA-5, Vulnerability Monitoring and Analysis, which requires organizations to analyze vulnerabilities and classify them based on impact severity, ensuring that risk mitigation efforts focus first on the highest risk vulnerabilities. A global healthcare provider implementing this control may use automated vulnerability scanning tools to detect security weaknesses in electronic health record systems, ensuring that critical vulnerabilities are patched before less severe security updates are addressed. Another key control is RM-2, Risk Response Planning, which mandates that organizations develop structured methodologies for prioritizing cybersecurity risks based on their potential business impact and likelihood of occurrence. A financial services firm implementing this control may establish a risk response strategy that prioritizes immediate mitigation for critical threats, such as credential theft and account takeovers, while implementing continuous monitoring for lower-risk security concerns. Prioritizing risk response strategies also aligns with IR-4 incident handling, which requires organizations to ensure that cybersecurity incident response efforts are aligned with prioritized risk mitigation strategies, allowing teams to focus on the most critical threats first. This control ensures that organizations establish clear workflows for addressing cybersecurity incidents based on their severity, ensuring that high-impact attacks receive immediate attention, while lower-priority security concerns are handled through continuous monitoring and long-term remediation efforts. A multinational energy provider implementing this control may prioritize immediate containment and mitigation for ransomware attacks, targeting industrial control systems while addressing minor software vulnerabilities through scheduled security patching. These controls can be adapted based on organizational size, industry, and cybersecurity maturity. A small business may implement basic risk prioritization measures, ensuring that cybersecurity risks related to customer data, financial transactions, and critical operations are addressed first, before focusing on lower-impact security concerns. A large enterprise may deploy AI-driven risk scoring tools, automated risk prioritization platforms, and real-time attack surface monitoring solutions to ensure that cybersecurity risks are continuously assessed, ranked, and mitigated in a structured and scalable manner. Organizations in highly regulated industries such as healthcare, finance, and government contracting may require legally mandated cybersecurity risk prioritization audits, structured risk response planning, and regulatory-driven security mitigation strategies to ensure compliance with industry cybersecurity requirements. Auditors assess an organization's ability to prioritize risk response strategies by reviewing whether structured, documented and continuously enforced cybersecurity risk prioritization frameworks are in place. They evaluate whether organizations implement structured risk scoring models, enforce real-time risk ranking policies, and integrate predictive cybersecurity risk modeling methodologies into enterprise-wide security governance strategy. If an organization fails to prioritize cybersecurity risks effectively, auditors may issue findings highlighting gaps in cybersecurity risk ranking models, weak alignment between security investments and actual risk exposure, and failure to integrate risk prioritization strategies into cybersecurity risk mitigation workflows. To verify compliance, auditors seek specific types of evidence. Cybersecurity risk ranking reports and structured risk prioritization analysis documentation demonstrate that organizations formally define and enforce structured cybersecurity risk response governance models. Threat severity classification records and real-time risk prioritization audit logs provide insights into whether organizations proactively assess cybersecurity risk levels and allocate mitigation efforts accordingly. Incident response evaluations related to high-severity cybersecurity risks and real-time predictive attack simulation reports show whether organizations effectively track, prioritize, and mitigate cybersecurity threats before they escalate into major security incidents. A compliance success scenario could involve a global technology company that undergoes an audit and provides evidence that cybersecurity risk response strategies are fully integrated into enterprise cybersecurity governance, ensuring that security teams continuously evaluate risk exposure, prioritize high-severity threats, and dynamically adjust security controls based on real-time risk intelligence. Auditors confirm that cybersecurity risk response planning is systematically enforced, security protections are dynamically adjusted based on risk severity, and enterprise-wide security policies align with structured cybersecurity risk prioritization governance requirements. In contrast, an organization that fails to implement structured risk ranking models, neglects dynamic risk prioritization, or lacks formalized risk mitigation workflows may receive audit findings for poor cybersecurity risk awareness, weak cybersecurity risk response prioritization, and failure to align cybersecurity risk mitigation strategies with regulatory compliance mandate. Organizations face multiple barriers in ensuring that cybersecurity risk prioritization remains continuous and effective. One major challenge is lack of automation in risk ranking methodologies, where organizations fail to implement real-time risk scoring tools, leading to outdated or incomplete cybersecurity risk prioritization. Another challenge is failure to align risk prioritization models with evolving cybersecurity threats, where organizations do not update risk ranking frameworks based on new adversary tactics, increasing exposure to high-severity cybersecurity threats. A final challenge is over-reliance on static risk response models, where organizations apply traditional cybersecurity risk prioritization methodologies instead of dynamically adjusting security risk rankings based on real-time intelligence and predictive threat analytics. Organizations can overcome these barriers by developing structured cybersecurity risk prioritization frameworks, ensuring that cybersecurity risk mitigation strategies remain continuously optimized, and integrating real-time risk ranking models into enterprise-wide cybersecurity governance strategies. Investing in automated risk prioritization platforms, predictive cybersecurity risk analytics, and AI-driven threat severity evaluation solutions ensures that organizations dynamically assess, monitor, and refine cybersecurity risk prioritization strategies in real time. Standardizing cybersecurity risk response governance methodologies across departments, subsidiaries, and external business partners ensures that cybersecurity risk ranking policies are consistently applied, reducing exposure to cybersecurity threats and strengthening enterprise-wide risk mitigation resilience. By embedding risk prioritization into enterprise cybersecurity governance strategies, organizations enhance cybersecurity risk awareness, improve regulatory compliance, and ensure sustainable cybersecurity risk management strategies across evolving cyber risk landscape. That wraps up today's discussion on framework. Don't stop here. Head over to cyberauthor.me to explore more cybersecurity topics and discover a best-selling book covering NIST and other critical cyber frameworks. Please like, rate, and review this episode on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, remember, that knowledge is power.